Working on a Loch Navar boiler system for a house. Just wanted to explain how to get the air out of these things. So first thing I do is that's the fill valve. I'll set it to 20 psi. Then I'll go around and I'll close off the isolation valve for the return and supply on the boiler, going to the boiler. Next thing I'll do is I'll go to the supply valves. In this case, it's got 3 circuits. So you close each circuit, supply, and then you go around and close the return isolation valves. So the first thing I do is, since we got all 3 supplies, all 3 return valves closed, I've got the boiler isolation valves closed, as I like to start from the bottom and work my way up because air rises. So it just makes more sense to start from the bottom and work your way up. So if you can see here, it's got inlet or return outlet for supply. If you follow the return pipe, it goes down where the return circulator pump comes around, shoots over to here to the drain. So I know I want to hook up to this one. You always hook up to the returns when you're getting the air out. And if you run into a boiler that doesn't have all this stuff, really the only way to get the air out is to quote them for installing isolation valves and drain valves. Otherwise, you're just going to keep fighting to get all the air out. You're never going to truly get it out. So first thing I want to do is, since we're working on just the boiler, is you always keep the return isolation valve closed, but for the circuit that you're currently working on, you open the supply. So in this case, it's the right side here. So next thing you want to do, open up the drain. You'll hear the fill valve. Try to maintain that 20 psi. So just to recap, at first I had all the supply isolation valves and all the return isolation valves and the boiler isolation valves closed, and we're starting from the bottom. Then we'll do the main floor, then we'll do the second floor because it's a 2-story house with a basement. Start from the bottom up. So since I want to do the boiler first, keep the return isolation valve closed, open up the supply isolation valve, and open up the drain on the return, and let that run for about 5 minutes, and I'll be back. Alright, so it's been about 5 minutes. The first thing you do is close off the drain valve. Then wait for that fill valve to quit making noise, so that way you know there's 20 psi in these pipes. And then you want to close off that supply isolation valve. Take off your garden hose. Just in a tight spot. And then we want to go to the second highest circuit, which in our case would be this one, which is actually for the basement. And we're on the return side of the basement circuit. And then you just locate the supply valve for the basement circuit. Open that up. Open the gate valve for the drain on the return side. Let that run for about 5 minutes. I usually have a bucket and it'll fill up with water, and that way I can see if there's any air bubbles. But in this case, I'm in a basement and I can't use a bucket or I get water everywhere. So we'll just run it for 5 minutes. And I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes, so first I'll close off this drain valve. Then I'll close off the supply valve. And that was for the basement. So now we're going to go to the main floor, which happens to be this one, on the return side. Because you always drain on the return side. And then find the supply valve for the main floor, which is this one. So you just open that, and then open the drain. Let that run for about 5 minutes. All right, it's been about 5 minutes on this one, so we'll close the drain valve. Then we'll close the supply valve for the main floor. And last but not least, second story return. Got that on nice and tight. Then this is a supply valve. You want to open that up. So that way when the water comes in from the fill valve, the only way it can go is through that circuit that we are hooked up to on the return side. So it'll fill up all the way through the house, all the way through the radiators on that circuit, and then it comes back through here. And this valve is closed, so the only way it can go is through here. So we're pretty much just replacing all the old water that has air trapped in it with new water that has no air in it. So we'll do that for about 5 minutes and I'll be back. Alright, so now that we're done flushing out the last circuit, close off the drain valve, close off the supply valve. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up all these bleeder screws on the circulator pumps. There's one down there, and there's another one up top. And then I'm going to go to all the baseboard radiators, or the cast iron radiators, and open up the coin vents, make sure no air comes out and just water comes out. I'm going to start with the basement, then I'm going to go to the main floor, then the second story floor, and I'll be back after all that. Alright, so I'm on the main floor. As you can tell, there's a step here, then there's 2 steps there. So even though it's on the main floor, you still want to start with this one because it's technically lower than the rest. And I'll just show you just this one here. Just know that's what I'm doing for the rest of them. You always want to have a bottle or something to catch the water. Just open up this screw. As you can see, nothing but water is coming out, so we know that's not airlocked. And I'm just going to go do that to all of them. Start with the main floor, then I'm going to go upstairs. Alright, so we're on the main floor. Just want to show you this because this is the only one I actually had air come out of. Yep, see, once water comes out, you're good to go. If you're wondering how to burp these pumps, you literally just unscrew it until you see water come out. Just ensure everything in there is full of water. Alright, so now we've already flushed every single circuit, burped every circulator pump, and bled every single coin vent at every single radiator. You want to open up all the valves. Alright, so we got all the valves open. Oh, missing one. So now that we're done getting all the air out, on a 3-story house, we just want about 15 psi. You don't want 20 because when it heats up, it increases the pressure. And remember, that pressure relief valve opens at 30 psi. So 15 psi on that. Remember, we had it at 20 psi, so you want to hook up to the return. So all the pipes, all the isolation valves open. Hook this in. Then you just open the drain until it gets to 15 psi. And then after that, you turn the boiler on and just feel all the returns. Make sure they're hot. If one is still cold, you gotta do it again. But that's it.